Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chainy podcast. I am your host, Nathan Chaney, and we're really pleased to have a special guest with us today, Mark Baxa, who is the president and CEO of CSCMP. For those who might not be familiar, that stands for the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, which is not a mouthful at all. And if you've been around in the circle long enough in the group like Mark and I have, it just rolls off the tongue naturally. But there's a fair number of people, surprisingly, that haven't heard all about it and been all about it for many years. And I would like to try to bring those people up to speed through this conversation, really. So, Mark, can you take a minute to introduce yourself a little bit more?
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, Nathan, for asking me to join, and hello to your audience. Great. So certainly, I began my career having graduated from the University of Illinois in 1981 and went into production agriculture. That was my goal at the time. And not knowing where the career would end up, along the way, you have new discovery and things that you find that are topically of interest, but also operationally or even from a leadership perspective. And I found myself going into product management on the international side after about 6 years of work, and then found from there the opportunity to really engage on the international supply chain side. And that was before it was really called supply chain, right? It was international logistics or international trade or global trade. And I had a lot of fun doing that, and perhaps some of the best experience still today. I remember a lot of that, as many of you will, your early days when you started to discover some things that might be of bigger interest than you ever thought you might be interested in the very beginning. So like many supply chain professionals of my generation, did not go to a program that had a 4-year supply chain program. It was more around specifically a function, and that was crop production. So I would say probably around 1997-98 timeframe, the company I worked for was merged into a very large Fortune 500 company. And I found myself with the responsibility of global logistics, and that was really fun. And I said, how do you spell that? So the problem we had to solve was the opportunity to double sales in less than 2 years. And we didn't quite get there, Nathan, but it was really close. And admittedly, there were a lot of trials and errors as we did that. But I found the Council of Logistics Management at the time, CLM, which was the forerunner name of CSCMP, or as you said, Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. That switch, we'll talk about later, occurred in 2005. So I got connected to my predecessor's predecessor at the time, Maria McIntyre, told her my challenge that I had, and she partnered me up with somebody in Bentonville, Arkansas, and said, you need to talk to this individual who can help you with solving your problem. And that's the connection that was made inside of CSCMP today, but then CLM. That was perhaps one of the biggest, most impactful mentorship opportunities that I had, because that led to a proliferation of exposure. So suffice it to say, I led logistics both domestically and internationally, and went into the procurement space as well, and then retired in 2018. But along the way, I was also part of CSCMP at a volunteer level in St. Louis at the Roundtable Leadership Board, and then eventually onto the CSCMP Board of Directors, and led the association as chair of the board in 2019. And now I'm here as the CSCMP President and CEO, and I'm happy to serve our membership and affiliates around the world.
Looking through the rest of your resume here, it looks like you made that jump that so many of us do from sort of a corporate world type of role into an independent sort of consulting type of role. Can you tell a little bit about how that transition happened and what your experience was like with that?
At my company, former company that I left, which retired from in 2018, which was Monsanto Bayer, the giving back to the profession is so essential. John Maxwell, leadership guru, once said that if you want to know what's on the road ahead, ask somebody on the way back. And a lot of us do that. And I'm happy to do that. That's really what I wanted to do. When I left Monsanto Bayer and started my consulting practice, I focused on international trade, the international supply chain, and also leveraging some of the procurement aspects of that, such as onboarding of logistics partners and overall business strategy. And that was really fun, and still is today, although being on a very limited basis, because nearly every hour of every day is dedicated to CSCMP. And I believe that fully that, consulting can do something that's really great for businesses. And consultants are very needed and certainly very valuable in accelerating the learning curve, but also finding solutions. And I wanted to be a part of that.
Your roots kind of with CLM and CSCMP kind of brought you back in and kind of called you to say, hey, come back and help kind of the next generation and lead this organization. Can you talk a little bit about that transition into the leadership role at CSCMP?
In terms of the transition to CSCMP, Rick Blaskin, a great personal friend of mine and still works with us directly in a number of capacities, is a great friend. And when Rick decided to retire, the board asked me to come in as an interim until we figured out our path ahead. And that was certainly during the era of COVID. Lots of stress, both financially and operationally, for every one of us, as we all realize at the time. And CSCMP was the engine that could. I mean, there was no question that we were going to pull through. And when Rick retired, I stepped in as interim. And after about a year in that role, not quite a year, the board elected to just slide that into a multi-year agreement. And that's how I rolled into the current role that I'm in today.
What's maybe one of the most impactful experiences that you've had in CSCMP? Is there one particular relationship or event or story that kind of comes to mind?
I'll go back to the story that I touched on just a little bit ago, and that was, and it's a little dated, but it's very true, and a similar experience that many have had, and I hope many more will have, and that is when you're in a position to solve a critical problem, a supply chain problem, that is really more of a, as some have said, a probopportunity, right? It's an opportunity, but it's an equation that you have to solve. I had to redesign the entire network to take our current manufacturing and distribution throughput, which was heading towards maximum capacity, not fully, but almost, and prepare us to double our throughput without adding any bricks and mortar in terms of ownership, but looking at a distribution model that was quite different to solve our problem. And I couldn't just walk around the hall with a blueprint to say, hey, our solution is we're going to add 6 third-party regional distribution centers. We're going to go out to third-party logistics companies who we're going to lease the space from. They're going to handle all of our products for us without all of our quality and manufacturing folks saying, time out, just a minute. We all know that we pose risk to our products if in fact they're handled multiple times. And our product line was predominantly seed, corn, hybrid corn, soybean seed, sorghum, alfalfa for production agriculture. And it was international, not just the U.S. And the more you handle it, you put certain species have more risk, like soybeans. They're very fragile, right? So you talk about adding additional handling. Well, you just can't go out and do that. You have to prepare for the movements and train people as well. So there was a lot of concern about the ability to do that. I surrounded myself, both intentionally, but also others that heard, just through the connections in the association, that hey, they might want to help, right, solve the problem. And some of those folks turned out to be future chairs of the board, and still are my great friends today. People like Kevin Smith and Remco van Hoek and many others that help solve these problems, at least gave me insight as to how to address them. And again, I go back to Maria McIntyre, who created the pathway to visit the logistics VP at Walmart, who talked about the distribution strategy and overall concepts, which weren't necessarily new in terms of thought, but I had no idea, admittedly, how I was going to get that done in such a short period of time. So that was the most impactful. Now, forward-facing today, we're creating experiences inside of CSCMP that truly fulfill our mission, because our mission is clearly stated as we exist to connect, educate, and develop supply chain professionals throughout their career, and that's academics, service providers, beneficial cargo owners, and practitioners, and now the early stages of high school and collegiate level students, and even maximizing on the opposite side those who just want to give back, who have reached that stage in their life, who are no longer working. So we cover the full spectrum, but we've added educational content, and we reward our members back with opportunities that they've never seen before inside of CSCMP. And we're doing that through a cross-section of people we pay, but mostly through our volunteers. And we've created some great programs. So I'm really proud of that. And on the road ahead, I'm sensing that Our members are telling us the most important thing we can do today is upskill today's workforce. With the evolution of digitization, obviously artificial intelligence and machine learning, but not that just alone, that's a big part of it, is how does all this take shape? What do we do about the AI-infused leader of the future? What do we do about AI as a part of our practice in any one of the functions inside of supply chain? And how do we make it more holistic so it's a connected, energized, and certainly motivated, all people rowing the same direction based supply chain? In fact, you're going to hear about one of our keynotes is going to talk about synchronization. Roberto Azea, CVP of Supply Chain at Mattel, on Tuesday morning at the EDGE conference, and it's going to be really, really fantastic. He and I had our first briefing on this just recently, and the ideation that's coming from him and how to get this done should be very clear to those that hear his message.
When you touched a moment ago on developing and upskilling the workforce of the future, my touch point with CSCMP is most strongly with the roundtables, being the president of the roundtable here in DFW, helping host a lot of events and going to schools and talk about CSCMP and the value of networking and all that sort of good stuff. So that's where my main touch point is. And I think maybe a lot of people that are at the fringes, that have a similar type of perspective or view of CSCMP is what they see at their local roundtable level. Can you talk a little bit about at the more national and national sort of level, those development programs and kind of that worker upskilling and research and data that CSCMP does?
Yeah, that's a big question, Nathan, so I'll try to break that up in pieces. But first, what I like to do, and when you and I first met at MHI not too long ago at Modex, I think one of the first things we talked about is your volunteer work as a leader of the roundtable there in Dallas. And I want to thank you personally for your intentional engagement and the time that you invest, because like others who have come into this organization, they generally hit it through the pathway of the roundtables. And we have over 50 of them worldwide, and we're adding more in Mexico, Panama, and now Canada. So excited to bridge to your question a little further. So our roundtable structure is a place where we coalesce 365 days out of the year, in addition to the EDGE conference and a live, sometimes virtual, but mostly back to live event now, where we do connect and we do educate and we have live sessions and introspective conversations. And from that, you talk about what's happening on the front lines right there nearby, but also globally, depending on the speakers that you have, the panels you host, and the events that you have. And that's really great. Connecting that to everything else that we're doing, the roundtables help create that, help drive members into CSCMP so people see that the membership model is alive and well in the supply chain. And why is that? Number one, it's not very expensive. It's very, very low cost. And look, don't wait on your company to fund this thing. Do it for yourself. Invest in yourself, right? Become the next better individual. In fact, turn yourself towards unrecognizable. Make people wonder where you got all this knowledge. Best deal on the planet. So connecting that to the more on a global scale, or as you referred to, the national level, we're all partnered in this, and we're not, we don't create the best ideas at the headquarters level. The best ideas come from our members. So a number of years ago, we created SC Pro certification, and that's a very comprehensive 8-block true certification. It takes anywhere from 10, 12 months, sometimes a little bit longer if you're a very involved working professional. It could take you a while to get through it and then sit for the exam and pass it. It's very rigorous and it's well established, but it's also highly recognized as the most comprehensive supply chain certification in the business. The flip side of that is that, and when I talk about upskilling, leaders, and I talk about supply chain leaders, are bringing their folks to CSCMP from an upskilling perspective, but not necessarily to only get certified. That's a good thing to do. There are programs inside of companies where they have accelerated programs and development for individual contributors who frankly have a seat at the table to solve the most critical supply chain problems, and they're more likely to have multi-certifications in different capacities, be it project management, supply chain, and others, because that's what their DNA enables them to do, right? That's their strengths finders, if you will. That's their talent. And others just say, look, why is it I'm finding the best answers outside of my company? The company's got to have competitive advantage. We've got to continually learn. As Stephen Covey used to say, sharpen the saw. We created SC Pro Fundamentals for that purpose. And that's an 8-course program that starts with a assessment, a 40-question assessment. You take that assessment, and look, we charge $199 for the assessment, but I'm telling you right now, biggest secret on the block is you become a premier member, you can get that assessment for free. You become a corporate member, you get the assessment for all of your people for free. Then we come back and we'll show you, are you needing help in procurement, planning, customer service, transportation, wherever it might be, right? And then you take the specific fundamentals course. Now, sure, you can take all 8, and that's great, get certificates in each one. But more importantly, we help corporate members and individual members target their learning. And then outside of that, we've made a broad access through our collaboration with LinkedIn. We call it internally SC Pro Foundations, which it sounds entry level, but it's really not. It's really a nice set of courses that you can enter into at will on your own if you're a premium member on LinkedIn. And you could take CSCMP's SC Pro Foundations or Supply Chain LinkedIn courses and get a certificate of completion when you pass the exam. Here's the fun part, right? This is truly fun. We have had combined all of our educational offerings in the last 14 months. We've had almost 40,000 people, 40,000. Take skill-based learning development courses at CSCMP. And guess what? 24/7 access, doing it all on your own time, at your own pace. And that's what it's all about. Now, some do like proctored classes. Some do like to hear an instructor. They learn better that way. I respect that fully. So we've also created, through our education leader, Delisa Smith, we've created online capability to access this course content with an instructor. And that'll start again after the EDGE conference, early October. So these are just really some of the educational offerings. And then now, as for your membership, you also have access to all of our research reports, white papers, and our Supply Chain Exchange, formerly Supply Chain Quarterly Review magazine. That keeps you abreast in all the current happenings, as well as deeper end studies about the semiconductor industry and the global supply chain. We're coming out with a brand new report, which we will be announcing the 3rd day of EDGE. We're going to hold off till then, but it will be highly impactful, and it's now moving to the #1 interest of supply chain leaders. Now, to say it supplants AI, no, AI is inside of it, but you'll see. You'll have to come to the EDGE conference to get the first-hand look at it, but for our members and others, you'll be receiving that report's availability on the 2nd or 3rd of October. But anyway, your membership gets you that. So there's kind of what I call tapping the flywheel, keeping you current on the most happenings and most current information in the marketplace. And then insights on how you're going to solve critical problems also come that way. You can't get that through fundamental knowledge or learning blocks that look at core logistics strategy, especially when you're talking about what do you do if ILA and the ports don't agree on the 30th of September, right? Are you planning for that now? So you don't get that in a textbook. You don't get that online learning. You get that through insights and learning from peer professionals and, of course, the supplier community to help solve those problems. We make those connections. So I can go on for a long time. Hopefully I'm targeting the answer you wanted to hear on what we're doing. But the roundtables take this massive information and share its availability. That's all we ask at the roundtable level. Just share its availability so people realize why membership really matters and why connectivity into CSCMP helps them be better throughout their entire career. And that's what it's all about.
I appreciate all the detail. One thing that stood out that you mentioned was you set out, don't wait for your employer, to fund this membership, et cetera. And I would say that that's actually one of the experience that I had is I actually was one of those students that was involved when I was in school. And then when I left, when I was done with school, got a supply chain degree, went into 3PL world and was just an individual contributor. And so my employer didn't really see value, in kind of covering that cost for me to be part of the group. And so I fell away for a few years. Interestingly, when I first became a manager and I was responsible for people, logistics, operations, recruiting, sales, performance, P&L, all the above, I realized, oh my gosh, I've got to go recruit people. I got to go sell my services. I need a network, right? And so it was
Yeah.
that got me back in the seat. And of course, I just naturally drifted back into the CSCMP world that I was accustomed to from back when I was in school. And naturally just kind of moved from the person checking in people at the front table for events to the YP chair, to the events chair, to the president, right? So over a series of 8 years, went through that full sort of movement throughout the board here in DFW, and got a lifetime of friendships and networking connections and experience, and just all the benefits that came from that. And I heartily endorse that whole process to anybody who wants to give of themselves in order to get something back in return. And that the more that you can give, the more you'll get back out of an organization, as you well know, and many other volunteers. Yeah. Earlier, you kind of talked a little bit about how the 50 different roundtables are kind of a bridge between the EDGE annual conferences. Can you talk a little bit about that conference itself? I know it's coming up soon. And what I'd be interested to hear, given your history of experience with CLM and CSCMP, is how have you seen that conference evolve over the years? That I really love to hear the stories of how things used to be a little bit and comparing it to what it's like today.
Yeah, great. So we are in Nashville this year at the Marriott Gaylord Hotel and Conference Center. Gaylord Opryland, a great place. We've been there several times in the past, and we'll be there again in the road ahead. It's just a great venue. And we appreciate very much the Marriott family of products that help us put on such a great conference. So we'll be there September 29th. Actually, the educators start with the what we call the ARS, the Academic Research Symposium, that starts on Saturday the 28th. And then Sunday, the evening of Sunday 29th, we kick off with a reception, and we go through 10:30-ish on Wednesday, the 2nd of October. How it's evolved over the years, that once upon a time, this was 100% education and academic. There were no service providers that were demonstrating their part of the supply chain ecosystem. And in the mid-2000s, we made a shift to start working on some form of an expo, and we called it the Supply Chain Exchange. And this is really a place where ideas get exchanged. This is where our service providers come to share. And this is part of the supply chain ecosystem, Nathan, and I think it's really important that people see this from a view of the 100,000-foot level. So we all have known CSCMP to be that producer of unbiased education and bring people who can demonstrate that, and we are still 100% sold on that. That's who we are. We're a not-for-profit. We don't sell things for a profit. We sell things to generate revenue, to invest in research and other things that help us do the great things that we do for the profession. Remember, our mission is to connect, educate, and develop the supply chain professional through their career. Service providers are a huge part of that. We were just talking about artificial intelligence. And by the way, I think it's one of the best things that I've ever seen since sliced bread. But yeah, it comes with some risk, of course. There's always opportunities to take advantage of things. The last was the internet, and then we got into, things like really cool, Walgreens starting the first barcoding systems, and then we moved on with IBM, and then we moved on to RFID, and now then it went to, other things, blockchain, which is still in existence and being used. And now we're into artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it's just like incredible what this can do for not only just providing better pathways for shared value, the optimum product at the right time and right place in the right form, if you will, without excessive waste in the supply chain, right? Improving our sustainability footprint, which is really cool, and optimizing profits, but it's also a way for us to connect the more finite things to predict so that we're best prepared. I mean, think about what we needed during COVID. Think about what we needed, right, during that most crucial time for human survival, not just human health, human survival. So I'm counting on these technologies doing great things inside the supply chain. So the service provider industry, look, very few of us make our own IT platforms. Very few businesses as BCOs, beneficial cargo owners, and practitioners. We don't build our own warehouses generally, right? We lease into those. We find 3PLs to help us with logistics, transportation contracts, and all that stuff. So that is a mandatory part of a practitioner's ecosystem. Be not afraid. Go in there, right? So we've expanded that. And you're going to hear Gary talk about this when you have him on. Gary's such a great partner with me in putting on this conference with Agile Business Meeting Events. He's going to talk about the Supply Chain Exchange and our sponsors. And the cool thing is when we bring those folks together with the industry practitioners and the academics, there's that ecosystem of learning and development that occurs because we're all talking to each other. We're all working together to create the next solution, right? And solving for today's problems. So we're better prepared. We're more resilient. We're more agile, creating better pathways. I'm excited to see how well this is going to work after September 30th. And we got a little something going on right now in Canada, which by the time this podcast comes out, hopefully it's either resolved or it's ongoing. But we got the potential for a very large rail strike. So we're going to face these challenges. And inside the EDGE conference, we're prepared to help people understand how others have overcome barriers that are beyond their own control, per se. Geopolitical, we're going to talk about all forms of the functions of supply chain and solving critical challenges, but also the next in innovation from planning and procurement, logistics, transportation, warehousing, distribution, customer service, leadership. We have special tracks that have evolved now even better. You'll relate to this, Nathan, because you've been a part of it for so many years, and that is for the young professional. So there are some really amazing things that are going to occur, and we're going to break news on Wednesday morning when we unveil our latest in a series of new research in supply chain. So that's how things have evolved. That's how we've created more, if you will, benefit. And the other thing I'll say is to all of the attendees that come, we have not raised the price of this conference in over 8, maybe 9 years. It's the same price it's been for years. Now, yes, it does cost to come, but there's various ways to take cost out of that by either registering early or having a certain membership level, be it corporate or premier. We find pathways to discount off of that because the last thing we want you to do is to stay home. This is the place to be. This is supply chain's preeminent event in educational learning encompassing the full ecosystem.
Suggestions or advice for those who are kind of just starting to figure out how to spell supply chain and what they might want to do someday, from skills, volunteerism, actual classes in school. Any suggestions for them?
So first I would say is if your school has a supply chain club, join it. Get inside. Get involved in that way. At least you're going to hear some perspectives from outside the educational environment, hopefully from industry professionals that are invited into that club as, per se, guest speakers or other activities. I think it will put you in a place where you can now get a better understanding from, if you will, outside the academic community and blend that into what you're learning in the classroom. It'll also help you kind of get to know people that could actually be lifelong contacts or someday peers of your own. If you don't have a supply chain, if you will, program that allows, some gathering of students, you don't have a club of any kind, CSCMP will set you up. So inquire at membership@cscmp.org or reach out directly to me at msbaxa@cscmp.org, and I'll be happy to channel you in a place where we can start helping you create your own supply chain club at your university or college. The second part I would do is get to know supply chain instructors or, if you will, business school instructors that have connections into industry who can make connections for you in industry per se. Now, I'm not implying at all that your path wouldn't be more towards the academic path where you would go on to get your master's and PhD and turn around to instruct. I'm not saying that's not a path. It is a path. But if your pathway is to go into the business world, you want to start setting yourself up as early as you possibly can. So talk to your professors about contacts they can make for you, people just to network and get to know. The third element is our roundtable structure. So we have professional roundtables around the globe, and if you happen to be in a city where one is featured, and you can find them on our website at cscmp.org, start attending those events, get to know the industry, get to know people, hear the latest in concepts and what you're learning from an academic perspective, and see them in real life situations. And you might even hear innovative practices that you've yet to touch in the classroom. So this is another avenue for you to get connected. And I'll put in a fourth one. If you can carve out the time as a student Come on to the EDGE conference this year in Nashville, Tennessee, September 29th through the 2nd of October. It's okay. Take a little time off of school. Come on and get yourself a really intensive immersion into supply chain. And then finally, anything we do as an organization from a webinar perspective or even becoming a student member, it's very low cost. You can access all of our content in the world of learning of supply chain. We're here to help you set yourself up on a great trajectory. And that includes mentorship programs as well. They're all available to our members as students.
If someone just fast forwarded through this entire podcast and they got right here to the last 2 minutes, that you would want to make sure that they heard from you today.
Two things. Okay, top of mind. One is for people leaders, invest in your people, be sincere about the budget allocation that you have and use it to develop your people. And CSCMP is not only a safe place, but it's an excellent place to do that for hard skill development for anyone in your supply chain. And that includes planning, procurement, manufacturing, transportation, warehousing, or logistics and distribution, customer service, and even those that are in supporting functions that need to understand how supply chains operate. We are your place to do that. We're here, we're open, and we are relevant. The second piece is that as leaders, maybe there's three as I think about it, or 2A, as leaders, the most comprehensive and intensive place to develop your team is CSCMP's EDGE conference. It's a combination of experiential learning and takeaways that will change the way you think about not only problems you're trying to solve, but how you innovate in the road ahead. And as a part of that outcome, your people will say, thanks for investing in me. And they're more likely to stay because you've demonstrated that you are truly a person of your words, that you are investing in them, not just on soft skills. I'm really talking about hard skill development. So as a people leader, take action and bring your people to the EDGE conference. And if you sign up as a corporate member, inquire at membership@cscmp.org that you have interest in a corporate membership and bringing a team to EDGE. We'll take care of it. The 2A is individuals. So let's just say you are on your own. Take the time to come to the EDGE conference. Connect, learn, and develop. And I'm not insinuating your next job is there, but you might find that on the road ahead. You might make such a connection. But more importantly, voluntarily come to change yourself, improve yourself, and go back to your company unrecognizable. Make them think that you have had some kind of revelation somewhere, that you know you've got a way to connect back to the education you received at our conference, to those that delivered it, to really reinforce and support you in what you heard if you have questions. And that's the value that we bring. So those are the things I wanted to deliver to the audience, more importantly than not necessarily anything else, but let's make the supply chain better by engaging together within CSCMP and take advantage of the EDGE conference to do that.
Excellent. Well put. Well put. You know, one thing that we haven't covered today, because we've been so focused on what seems to be our professional lives, and is that we haven't really talked a lot about what you do for fun. Like, who is Mark outside of all of this supply chain sort of professionalism? Sure. Tell me about that, Mark.
So Mark has held on to his family very tightly. And although on certain days it doesn't feel like it to them, I'm sure, just because of the demands of life and to some degree work, family is number one. And you know, certainly my faith in God is very, very important. But more importantly to just the outward world is that surely. But more importantly, I'd say if you want to know what I like to do, I love the outdoors. I love to fish. Used to love to hunt, but that takes work and it's usually cold weather, so I don't want to do that. You know, it's just I'd rather fish and enjoy the outdoors with Becky, my wife. Now our boys are both gone from home and have children of their own, and both of them are either in the supply chain or close knitted to the supply chain. By the way, on the other hand, we garden together. We love the outdoor experience. We enjoy loving life together. We've raised livestock for years. We used to show competitively purebred son and dairy goats for many, many years, and now we just have 5 acres that we live on in an estate southwest of St. Louis. Really enjoy it being here, and just anytime we can be outdoors, that's where we'd rather be. We really enjoy that together, and we just love our friends, and but more importantly, spending time with our family. So that's who I am.
I appreciate you kind of taking a second to just tell us about that other side of Mark, because I think so much of what people maybe know about you is what they see on stage or in the emails or on the conference calls, right? So,
Sure.
well, I appreciate you spending a little bit of time here talking with us about CSCMP, your career, some advice for individual professionals and corporations on how they can improve their supply chain prowess and maybe leveraging CSCMP to accomplish that. So again, thanks, Mark, for coming on today. And I guess I'll see you in Nashville soon.
Great, Nathan. Thank you again.
All right. Take care.